Join us at Walters on Friday, October 4th for our end-of-season podcast party. The evening is scheduled from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m.
Você que está ouvindo o seu podcast e curte fazer um bom negócio? Vai aí uma dica imperdível. A nova Chevrolet S10 está na sua melhor versão, bruta e macia ao mesmo tempo. De um lado, toda a força e potência de uma picape bruta, invocada e conectada. Do outro, todo o conforto que só a nova suspensão proporciona, muito mais macia e silenciosa, deixando suas viagens ainda mais confortáveis. É a nova S10 que você conhece e confia, ainda mais bruta, brutalmente macia. Acesse chevrolet.com.br para saber mais.
And the pitch swung on it high in the air to left field. Verdugo going back. Still back to the warning track, to the wall, and it is gone! Goodbye! Bang! Zoom goes Dylan Cruz with a majestic, soaring fly ball that just kept on going. Into the back of the Yankees bullpen in left center field. A game leadoff home run, his first in the major leagues for Dylan Cruz. He comes set in the pitch and Wood a half swing and a base hit through the hole into left field. In comes Nunez to score on a half swing. RBI single into left for Wood, who's 2 for 2.
Here's the pitch. Cruz hits a line drive deep left center field toward the gap. Way back it goes, and it's one hop off the base of the wall. Young will score. Nunez to third. The throw into second is handled behind the bag by LeMahieu. He's going to throw to third, and Nunez is out, overrunning the bag. A run does score. Nationals lead 5-1 on the Cruz double.
And welcome to Nats Chat for Thursday, August 29th. 2024, along with MASNsports.com Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman, who is at Nationals Park. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. Did we just see the Nationals' best series of the season? The Nats on Wednesday evening beat the American League leading New York Yankees 5-2 at Nationals Park to win the series 2-1. I suppose that the Nats losing game 1 prevents this from being the Nats' best series of the season, but the Nats' wins over the final 2 games of this series were so good in so many ways, but the principal reason for those wins being so good, Dylan Cruz. He on Wednesday evening in just his 3rd Major League regular season game was terrific. 2 for 4, solo homer, RBI double. Nats win. They, for this regular season, now 61-73. A lot of good vibes at Nationals Park over these last 2 nights. This installment of the Nats Chat podcast brought to us by the best legal recruiter in the Washington, D.C. market. Mason Kalfas stepped up to a World Series winner and hired the best legal recruiter out there. Check out Mason's website today, zenithlegal.com, or call or text him anytime, 202-486-3535. Nats president of baseball operations and general manager Mike Rizzo rolled the dice in having Cruz make his Major League regular season debut in this high-profile series against Juan Soto and the Yankees. The gamble paid off. I give Rizzo a lot of credit. I give Cruz a lot of credit. Cruz outplayed Soto in this series. Soto, over the 3 games, 0 for 12 with a walk and 3 strikeouts. Look, he's having an excellent season, but Cruz outshined Soto in this series. James Wood, he on Wednesday evening was good. MacKenzie Gore, he on Wednesday evening, a 2nd consecutive impressive start. Mark Cruz, Wood, Gore leading the way in a win over the Yankees to win a series against the Yankees. This was quite nice, what we had on Wednesday evening.
So here's my feeling about this, Al. Anybody who has endured the last 3 years, from the beginning of the teardown in 2021, the trade of Soto in 2022, and all the rebuilding that has taken place since then. If you've endured through that and your hope and your reason for sticking through it, all of this was because you felt like there was a light at the end of the tunnel. These last 3 days were for you. This was the light at the end of the tunnel. Now they're not there. They can see the light. They haven't cleared the tunnel altogether. And there are still several steps to take, and they're going to play out the rest of this season. They're going to have a very important offseason, and they're going to have to go into next season and then actually start winning on a regular basis. But I really feel like for the first time in 3 years, that light is right there and you can see it. And the reason, it's not that they took 2 out of 3 from the Yankees. It's that they did it with a bunch of young building blocks contributing in every possible way. They had 6 rookies in the lineup in this game. The 5 runs they scored were all scored by and driven in by rookies. And these are they're not all going to be stalwarts of a playoff team down the road, but they all have a chance to be. And some of them absolutely should be that. And then you throw in MacKenzie Gore, one of the most important young building blocks from the pitching standpoint, doing what he did. This is what you've been waiting for the last 3 years. Now, you got to see it consistently now. But it was right there all on display. And I feel like for the first time in 3 years, you should be optimistic about where this thing is headed. This is what they were building towards.
The Nats took it to the Yankees these last 2 nights. The Nats outplayed the Yankees these last 2 nights. There was so much to sink your teeth into if you're a Nats fan and feel good about. The Nats in this game on Wednesday evening, 5 runs, 10 hits, which were a home run, a double, and 8 singles, 3 walks, 4 for 11 with runners in scoring position. This off the Nats over the first 2 games of the series going 0 for 17 with runners in scoring position. The Nats and Yankees over the first 2 games of this series went a combined 0 for 30 with runners in scoring position. But the Nats on Wednesday evening, 4 for 11 with runners in scoring position. And the Nats on Wednesday evening ran like crazy in the early portion of the game. 5 for 5 on stolen bases, all of which came over the first 2 innings. The Nats in this game scored 2 runs in the bottom of the first, 2 runs in the bottom of the second, and a run in the bottom of the fourth. And each of the Nats' extra base hits in this game was by Dylan Cruz. He, in just his 3rd Major League regular season game, was the Nats starting right fielder and number 1 batter. The Nats' usual number 1 batter, shortstop C.J. Abrams, did not start this game. He has been struggling big time lately. But Cruz is not struggling. He on Wednesday evening went 2 for 4 with a solo homer and an RBI double. He per StatCast had 2 of the Nats' top 4 exit velocities in the game. He did strike out twice, but we can forgive that. Cruz in the Nats' 2-run first, leadoff homer to left field for a 1-0 Nats lead. The homer, his first at the major league level. Per StatCast, going a projected 399 feet and having an exit velocity of 105.8 miles per hour. And Cruz in the Nats' 1-run fourth, a 1-out RBI double off the left center field wall for a 5-1 Nats lead. Now, Nasim Nunez on the play was thrown out and retreating back to third base as, we had some bad base running by the Nats in this game. There was quite the exhibition of bad base running. We'll get to that later in the show. But the double by Cruz here per StatCast, exit velo of 105.4 miles per hour. He was the star of this game. He was the brightest star over these last 2 nights in a series that featured Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton. Dylan Cruz in his first Major League regular season series was the guy. So impressive.
Well, let's see. Out of all those names you just mentioned, who's the only one who hit a home run in the series? That would be Dylan Cruz, would it not? This was everything that you would have wanted to see from him in an opening series. And, we said on Monday night, it was kind of nondescript, nothing special, but I said it wasn't a bad game. He had quality at bats. He looked comfortable out there, especially under the circumstances. And once maybe the nerves wore off a little bit and he came back out on Tuesday, he absolutely put on a show of what he can do. And you saw a little bit of everything from him. You saw him hit for power. Obviously, he's got that trick in the bag. You saw him run the bases, which he has. He played defense. He led off. This is something that he actually has done a decent amount in his young baseball career at LSU and in the minor leagues as well. And it's something I think we're going to continue to see from him, at least against lefties. I think you're going to see him continue to lead off, and they're facing another lefty for the Cubs on Friday. So look for that again. He is a tone setter. He plays the game hard. He plays it well. He plays it smart. He does not look like a guy who was in college a year ago or slightly more than a year ago. And this is what they were so excited about all along. It's not necessarily that there's one tool that stands out above all the rest. It's not necessarily that there's a huge wow factor or that he's going to hit 450-foot home runs or, fire a throw to the plate from the warning track. It's all the things that he does well, how polished he is, how advanced he is. And I think you saw that in this first series.
4 for 11 with a home run, 2 doubles, a single, and a walk. Not bad for your first series. And again, Mike Rizzo made the right call, waiting until this series worked out just fine. He was not overwhelmed talking about Cruz. The Nats end up winning the series You know, this was a spotlight series, and Dylan Cruz thrived in the spotlight. I give him so much credit for that. And it wasn't just Cruz in terms of key Nats building blocks who did well on Wednesday evening. So we talk about Juan Soto. Well, two of the players who the Nats got in their trading of Soto and Josh Bell to the San Diego Padres on 8/2/22 were James Wood and MacKenzie Gore. Wood and Gore, each of those guys very significant in this win on Wednesday evening. Wood is the Nats starting left fielder and number 2 batter, 2 for 4 with an RBI single and another single. He did strike out twice, but he also went 3 for 3 on stolen bases. Wood in the Nats' 2-run first, opposite field single to left field. That single per Statcast, an exit velocity of 110.5 miles per hour. That would be the highest exit velocity of the game. And he had to steal a second base. And Wood in the Nats' 2-run second, a 2-out opposite field RBI single through the left side of the infield on a 1-2 pitch for a 4-1 Nats lead. And he had steals of second and third base. Again, 5 for 5 were the Nats on stolen bases over the first 2 innings. They were humiliating the Yankees with how freely and liberally the Nats were stealing bases over those first 2 innings.
What I was going to say is these were not close calls. This was not just narrowly getting in under the tag. They had Carlos Rodon completely out of whack, and the catcher, Austin Wells, they completely controlled that part of the game. And we talked about it the previous night with the good base running that they had. This is what it needs to be. Smart, aggressive, reading the pitcher, having a plan going in and executing what that plan is, not just running wild. Now, again, we're going to get to the stuff later on in the game that was a complete disaster on the bases. But for the most part, that was being done by guys who are not necessarily as important in the bigger picture and the guys who should be running a lot anyways. But to see them go after them and just take a step back and think about this whole series. Which team played, for the most part, good fundamental baseball and which team did not? It's not teams that you would see in the standings the way they are there. It was the young and hungry Nationals who played a much cleaner, not perfect, but cleaner brand of baseball than the Yankees, who, you know, we joked the other night about what talk radio was going to be like, and Tim had the great clip from after the game. I can only imagine what it is now after 2 of these in a row. The Yankees looked awful in so many ways in this series, I got to be honest.
Yeah, the Nats look like the team that is leading its league, not the Yankees. And with James Wood now, you're looking at 215 plate appearances since the Nats promoted him from AAA Rochester on July 1st. His OPS is at .807. His on-base percentage is at .377, which is phenomenal. You know, you do want to see him hit for some more power, but man, he is getting on base at such a high rate.
Hal, if you're listening, I beg you, if you don't make it this year, please get rid of everybody and bring in new people. I'm begging you.
Hal's not listening right now. Thanks for the call, Bruce. He's sleeping.
Are you a lawyer that hates your boss even more than you hate jerks in Profar? Does your law firm always fail, just like the San Diego Padres? Well, Nats Chat sponsor Mason Kalfas is the best legal recruiter in the DC legal market, and you should give him a call. Mason specializes in working with law firm partners, associates, and senior government lawyers in antitrust, securities enforcement, energy, and life sciences. Mason is the founder of Zenith Legal, a 10-person legal recruiting firm with recruiters in DC, New York, Philadelphia, and other cities. Mason has placed partners and associates in over half of the AmLaw 100 law firms. All conversations are 100% confidential and focused holistically on your career goals. Some lawyers change jobs for more money, some change jobs because of client conflicts, and some change because their colleagues are losers like the Padres and Phillies. Step up to a World Series winner and hire the best legal recruiter out there for free. Call Mason Kalfas today at 202-486-3535.
Precisa ferir a pressão, medir a glicemia ou tomar uma vacina? Na Drogasil tem exames, testes e calendário vacinal completo. E o que é melhor, tem sempre uma Drogasil aí perto de você. É fácil, prático e rápido. Dá para ir entre uma música e outra. Procure nossos farmacêuticos. Quanto mais você conhece o que a gente faz na Drogasil, mais você se cuida.
So now Gore could really use the double play, and more of a prime candidate, DJ LeMahieu, who doesn't run well, and he's hit into 11. The set at the belt, the pitch to the plate. Swinging a ground ball left side. It is cut off by Tena. To second for one. Garcia to first. A high throw. In time. Double play. Good stretch by Chaparro. And Gore immediately dials up the 5-4-3 double play to get out of trouble.
If I ask you, well, what was the biggest positive from this 5-2 win over the Yankees on Wednesday evening? You certainly could say Dylan Cruz, and I don't think anyone's going to tell you that you're wrong. But you know what? With the way that things had been going, I think you can make a compelling case that MacKenzie Gore doing as he did was, in fact, the most important development in this game. He was good for a second consecutive start. He, in facing this imposing Yankees lineup, did quite well. Is MacKenzie Gore now finally back on track? This was just his third good outing over his last 12 starts, but it was a second consecutive good start. Gore on Wednesday evening, 2 runs in 6 innings, 6 strikeouts versus 1 walk. He gave up 6 hits, a home run, and 5 singles. He did issue a hit by pitch and 2 wild pitches. He threw 102 pitches, 65 strikes versus 37 balls. He did not have a single clean inning, so it is important to note that. I don't know that you can say that he was dominant, although 6 strikeouts in 6 innings is quite good. So, not perfect, but he was effective, and he was a lot better than what he had been doing. And this comes off what he did this past Friday night. And that's a 3-2 10-inning loss at the Atlanta Braves. Gore in that game, 1 run in 6 innings. He in that game extremely pitch efficient. He in that game threw a lot of strikes. We've said this, how Gore ends his season matters so much. To see him do as he has done these last 2 outings and against 2 good teams in the Braves and Yankees, very encouraging.
Extremely encouraging, and the results have been good, yes, but in this game especially, the stuff was great, and that to me was the most important part of it. His velocity, which we've talked about for the last few weeks, was back where it was earlier in the year and actually above his season average. He was pumping 97, even 98 with his fastball. To see that come back was such a good sign, and I asked him afterwards, what do you attribute that to? Where did that come from? And he seemed to kind of talk around it a little bit, sort of acknowledging that, hey, sometimes over the course of the season, you feel better than other times. There's times you're not feeling so great. And he gave credit to the training staff for helping him through all this. I'm kind of reading between the lines here, but I feel like he wasn't feeling 100% there for a little while. And I don't know if that's, an actual ailment of some type or the mechanics were off and it was causing this. Whatever the case, he seems to believe that he turned a corner there, feeling better, cleaner mechanics, much better stuff from him. And that to me was the biggest difference. The results were great, but to see him get those results with the really good elite stuff that you want from a number 1 pitcher in the big leagues and to do it against the kind of hitters he was doing it against, that to me is huge. Again, we need to see it the next time out and after that and everything, but this felt like an important step in the right direction for him.
Yeah, when he was struggling, it was not enjoyable to watch him pitch. His outings took forever. His innings felt like they took an hour and a half. And it was just this laborious process. It was like a root canal watching him pitch. And I'm sure it was like that for him too. These last 2 outings have been entirely different. He's been much more efficient. He's getting outs. He's back to generating strikeouts. This is the Gore who we saw earlier in the season. Good stuff from him, and good stuff from the Nats bullpen. The Nats bullpen was not good over the first 2 games of this series, but the Nats bullpen on Wednesday evening, quite good. 3 Nats relievers combining for 3 scoreless innings. Jose A. Ferrer tossed a perfect top of the 7th. I think Jose A. Ferrer now is the new Derek Law. He's pitching in every game these days, but he did well in this game. Jacob Barnes tossed a scoreless and hitless top of the 8th. And then we did have the adventures of Kyle Finnegan. Now, he did toss a scoreless top of the 9th for the save, but he gave up a leadoff single by Anthony Volpe to left field and then issued a 6-pitch walk of Jazz Chisholm Jr. The single by Volpe had an exit velocity of 99.4 miles per hour per StatCast, and yet another instance of Finnegan giving up hard contact. Man, he comes into these games and batters tee off on him, but I give him credit. Scoreless 9th, gets the save. Nats bullpen in this game gets the job done.
Great job by Ferrer, 3 nights in a row. That's big. And after the whole thing with the red hot stuff on the arm the other night that almost got him in serious trouble, maybe even suspended if they didn't allow him to wipe that off, to come back and come up with a big pitch on Tuesday to get a double play that got him out of that inning. And then to come in here, 1, 2, 3, and get Juan Soto to end that inning. These were big steps forward for a young left-hander that they have some high hopes for. It was Ferrer, not Robert Garcia, who had the big lefty-on-lefty matchups late in these games. I think that was significant to see that. Jacob Barnes has quietly been very good for them. And especially with Derek Law out and Hunter Harvey and Dylan Floro gone, he's stepped up and is basically their setup man right now, believe it or not. And he's done a nice job. So credit to him. And as far as Finnegan goes, look, he acknowledges it. He knows this is not the best version of himself. He knows he's got to be cleaner than this. He can't get himself in these kind of jams. But I think at this stage of his career, he has learned a thing or two about how not to panic in those moments. And I know it doesn't always work out. There have been some games that fall apart on him and he cannot get it back. So I get that. But I still feel like he has some ability to rein it back in. As he described it, you get that first out, and it, in his mind at least, it changes the entire momentum of the inning. And now he feels like, okay, I got this under control. I'm back in charge here. I can get through this. And you saw that he got the first out and then got the other 2 outs relatively easily at that point. So it's not good, of course. You want 1, 2, 3 stuff from your closer as much as possible. And he has been anything but that. But he is finding a way to dig down and get through this right now when he's maybe not at his best. And there's something to be said for that. Nobody's ever going to be perfect. And the fact that he's still avoiding, for the most part, complete disaster. He's flirting with disaster a lot. But aside from a handful of bad blowups, he is finding a way to get through this right now when he has not been at his best.
Well, the Nats held the Yankees to just 4 runs over the final 2 games of this series. Hey, Al Galdi here to tell you about the latest great offer from Window Nation. For listeners of the Nats Chat podcast, get 2 free windows for every 2 windows that you buy, plus pay nothing with no interest for 2 full years, plus get an additional $250 credit. If you have been thinking about getting new windows, now is the time. Take advantage of this offer from Window Nation. Call 866-90NATION or visit windownation.com and tell Window Nation that you want the deal that you heard about from Al Galdi on the Nats Chat podcast. Window Nation windows are outstanding. 96% customer satisfaction rating. 96% of Window Nation windows installed require no follow-up service, and Window Nation has received more than 33,000 5-star reviews on Google. Take advantage of this offer. 2 free windows for every 2 windows that you buy. Plus, pay nothing with no interest for 2 full years and get an additional $250 credit. 866-90NATION or windownation.com. Tell Window Nation that you want the deal that you heard about from Al Galdi on the Nats Chat podcast. 866-90NATION or windownation.com and tell Window Nation that Al Galdi sent you.
And the pitch. Swing and a drive hit well to deep center field. Judge going back, way back to the warning track. It's over his head and 1 hop off the wall. Gallo held up, now rounding third. Now he's going to have to keep coming. He's going to be caught in a rundown. Now Gallo getting back to third. They have Yepes in a rundown between second and third. Now Gallo breaks for the plate. He's in a rundown. And Yepes is running back towards second. They're going to tag Gallo out. And Yepes caught between second and third. But has to go back to second, and Tena caught between first and second is tagged out. Yepes ends up on second base.
That's a disaster.
So, the base running boo-boo that we teased earlier in the show, we cannot have a proper, honest conversation about this game without talking about this play, which was as bad news bears of a play as you'll ever see. So first of all, there was another base running blunder earlier in the game. I mentioned it. Nasim Nunez on the Dylan Cruz RBI double getting thrown out and retreating back to third base. But how about what happened in the bottom of the 8th? Jose Tena, he was the Nats starting third baseman and number 5 batter. He went 1 for 4 with a single, also committed a throwing error in the top of the first. But Tena in the bottom of the 8th. Runners on first and second, nobody out. has what ends up going down as a single. But this was not your normal single. It was a single off the center field warning track on an 0-2 pitch. So a really good piece of hitting by Jose Tena. But the play resulted in a double play because Joey Gallo got tagged out in a rundown between third base and home plate. And then Tena got tagged out in a rundown between first base and second base. And that description does not do this play justice. You need to seek out the video of this play if you didn't happen to see it. You can find it online. This was incredible, what we saw. We have seen bad base running by the Nats throughout this season. We've talked about it so often. This was like another level. This was next level base running screw up. And I still have a hard time processing what exactly happened on this play. It was amazing to see it go down. Ends up not being of major consequence in the game, so you can laugh at it. But man, for this to happen was quite the visual.
All right, so a lot to discuss here. Let's begin with my first thought. I'm remembering a famous base running blunder by Ruben Rivera of the Giants, maybe 20 years ago or so. If you haven't seen it, watch the clip of it and listen to the great John Miller's call of it, because at the end of it, an exasperated John Miller just says, and that was the worst base running play in the history of the game. And that's what I felt watching this one. We sit high up top of the press box, you see the whole thing develop. And there are so many moments along the way that you're like screaming at them, no, don't do that, do this, do that. It was agonizing. For those who keep a scorebook and want to know the official scoring of the play, it was a single, and it was 8-6-2, 3-2, 5-4, with two of the outs coming in there along the way. All right, what happened? It starts with Joey Gallo not really getting a great jump off of second base to begin with. I think he was thinking he was going to tag up or something like that. So he gets to third base kind of late. And then behind him, Juan Yepez is not realizing the fact that Joey Gallo is just getting to third base and may not actually continue around third base. And so now he is too far around, and he slams on the brakes and goes back as Gallo gets into the rundown. And now what you have, and there were so many moments along the way that you just said, if two of the guys could just get on a base and stay there and then leave one other guy to get tagged out, they would have been okay. Would have been a bad play, but you'd have second and third with one out. And instead, they kept running in the wrong direction and prolonging the play. And I think Yepez started it. He got to third base. He should have just stayed there and let Gallo get tagged out. Instead, he goes back. Now Gallo goes back to third. Now Yepez is caught in the rundown. Now Tena has to run backwards. And you saw what happened with all that. You saw Ricky Gutierrez, the third base coach, who did not have a good night. It seemed like at one point turning his back on the play, throwing his hands up while the play is still going on, which you cannot have, of course, at any point. It was such chaos and such a bad example of not understanding in the moment how to salvage a situation like that. You're going to run into outs sometimes. It happens, okay? But when it happens, get onto a base, and once you touch the base, stay there. Don't start going the other way around. You're never going to salvage that whole thing, and everybody's going to be safe. Try to get as many guys safe on a base that cannot be tagged as possible, and I think that's where they really blew it more than anything else.
Gutierrez turning his back on the play during the middle of the play is inexcusable, and I would like to hear from him about that. That's not something that should ever happen. That's happening under your watch to, say I'm washing my hands of this play, or this isn't my fault, or I'm not a part of this. You don't do that. That's unprofessional. And I was very disappointed to see him do that. I've been thinking about the Nats base running issues. And, in other sports, NFL, NBA, NHL, teams practice during their regular seasons. Baseball, because you play almost every day, you don't really have practices, right? You have batting practice before a game. I guess you do fielding practice before a game. But are teams ever really working on stuff during regular seasons? I suppose a little bit, but not like in other sports. So I wonder, when a team has a fundamental issue like this, and the Nats clearly do, I don't care what they say, they do. It's as obvious as can be. Do they ever actually spend time working on it, addressing it, or do they just not have the time to work on it and address it? And so if you have an issue like this, you end up going an entire season without fixing it because you never take the time to work on it. In other sports, you can do it. In baseball, it's trickier. And you don't, like I said, you don't really have practices in baseball. So maybe is that part of this, perhaps, that they're just not attacking this head on because it's just not part of like the routine of a regular season?
Well, here's what I can tell you from experience, watching this over the years, how it works. You're right in that the kind of fundamental drills and practices that you do every day in spring training are not there regularly during the season. But they do at times. Sometimes it's just, hey, we haven't done this in a little while, so we're going to do it. And sometimes it is a reaction to things that have been going wrong. They do get everybody out on the field, or individuals, or a small group of individuals out on the field early prior to batting practice and work on something specific. I would say the majority of those are defensive drills. I wouldn't say I see a lot of base running type stuff or like working on rundowns and that kind of thing. I think the base running stuff is probably more individual work and has more to do with things like, getting good leads or reading pitchers' moves and things like that. I wouldn't say it's necessarily simulating game situations like, reading a ball off the bat. Now, everybody, when they take BP, they also then, when they're done, they kind of run the bases and they're supposed to follow who's ever hitting behind them and react like they would if it was a game. But it's just not quite the same thing. And so, no, you don't have that organized structure of a practice like you're talking about. And maybe that is one of the issues there. Yeah, there are things to practice, but sometimes it also just boils down to like baseball instincts. And maybe, we're not the ones down there as the chaos is going on all around us. And so it's easy sitting 500 feet up in the air and seeing the whole play develop to know what they should have done and yell at them for not doing it. Maybe it's harder to do that in the moment, but these guys are Major League Baseball players. They've gone through years and years and years of every situation you could encounter. You would think at some point those instincts should kick in, right? And that you should recognize what is happening and, when this happens, here's what I do to avoid disaster. And at least on this play, and certainly others that we've seen, there was none of that. It was like watching a little league team out there where the parents are screaming and the coaches are screaming and the kids can't hear what they're saying, or they hear that what they think is one thing, so they start running in the wrong direction. Really was bad. And I'll just say it's a great thing that they won the game, that Finnegan didn't blow it in the ninth, because while we can have this conversation, it's important that we have it. It could have been a whole lot worse if that really did cost them. And as we've been saying for months now, there is going to come a day here, and we think it's coming soon based on the other stuff that we've seen, that they are playing meaningful games. And you cannot have a meaningful game from a team trying to win get lost because of stupid mistakes like they make on the bases way too often.
I grew up watching This Week in Baseball with Mel Allen, and that play would have fit in so perfectly with like a 1987 version of This Week in Baseball. But the problem with the Nats is that they do stuff like this so often. So like you can only sort of laugh at this so much. It's funny when it happens once in a while. It's not really funny when it happens every night. Now, to this degree, does it happen in terms of like in a play this egregious? No. But this kind of thing happens game in, game out, and it's really bad. And that this team keeps doing this is really bad. So, we'll keep saying it. Got to get your arms around it. And, the other show I joked about, we should have a sponsor for Nats base running blunders because they make them so often. Sure enough, we have one. Our friend Dr. Jeff in Silver Spring, pediatrician to the stars, the base running boo-boo of the day. You can entrust your babies' boo-boos to our pediatric practice. We'll fix them up faster and with more success than any replay challenge can fix base running boo-boos. You'll joyfully slide in with a rewarding, reassuring, and emphatic safe signal under our care. Thank you for that, Dr. Jeff, very much. I wanted to mention two other things real quick. So I mentioned this. CJ Abrams not playing in this game. When he's right, he never sits. He now has not started 2 games in recent days. Didn't start the game against Chris Sale. Doesn't start this game on Wednesday evening. It's kind of a shame. We talk about, this game was fueled by all these Nats key building blocks. Wasn't fueled by Abrams. He didn't play in this game, and he's having a second consecutive wretched month. The other thing is Keibert Ruiz in this series, starting catcher for all 3 games. So So much for Drew Millis playing. And K-Bear went 0 for 4 in each game. So he had a rough series. Now, he overall has had a good month of August. I'm not here to hammer K-Bear Ruiz, but it does kind of stand out in a series in which your young building blocks did so much good work. Ruiz had a bad series. Abrams had a bad series. Didn't even start game 3.
Sure, it was not every one of the building blocks who contributed. It was a good number of them, and that was nice to see. And it would have meant even more if Abrams was in the lineup for this one. As far as the reasoning behind it, David Martinez acknowledging that Abrams is kind of feeling it right now, both at the plate and in the field. Obviously, they're facing a lefty. They have a day off Thursday, so he felt like this was an opportunity to give him back-to-back days off, reset the body, reset the mind, and then get back out there on Friday. He's got to get it back together again. You would hate to see what has been such a good season, such a good first half from him really fall apart with an awful second half. So this final month, of course, is big for him. And yeah, it would have been nice for him to be a part of this because he was the noticeably missing piece of the puzzle. Although I will say, Nasim Nunez had probably his best game in the big leagues and very quietly is starting to produce it. He doesn't play a lot, but after that second hit of his, he actually owned a batting average now in the big leagues over 300 and an on-base percentage over 400. I don't think that would happen if he played consistently, but he is at least making the most of these very limited opportunities. And in the field, we know how good he is. So it was kind of refreshing to see that. You had at one point the two teams that combined 0 for 36 with runners in scoring position in the series, and that streak was finally snapped by, of course, Nasim Nunez with his first career RBI. At all the star power in these two lineups, that was the guy to finally snap the 0 for runners in scoring position streak.
Yeah, 8 of the Nats' 10 hits came from the numbers 1, 2, 8, and 9 batters. Cruz, Wood, Jacob Young, and Nasim Nunez. This installment of the Nats Chat podcast brought to us by the best legal recruiter in the Washington, D.C. market, Mason Kalfas. Step up to a World Series winner and hire the best legal recruiter out there. Check out Mason's website today, zenithlegal.com, or call or text Mason anytime, 202-486-3535. Also, we want to send out a happy birthday to our friend Val. Now, this is an early birthday wish, but Val is just outstanding. She is a big-time supporter of this podcast. She is a big-time displayer of Nats Chat podcast t-shirts. She is a frequent visitor to the home base of the Nats Chat podcast, Walters, right by Nationals Park. And we love Val so much. She's been such a great supporter of the podcast. So we hope that you have an outstanding birthday, Val.
A very happy birthday to Val, who is as dedicated a Nats fan as I've ever seen. I know there are a lot of you out there. Val has the biggest jersey collection I've ever seen. And we're not just talking about the star power. We're talking about some obscure players that she keeps jerseys of. I think she brings more than one to the game, sometimes changes them during the course of the game. Happy birthday, Val. And I didn't know this. Your birthday comes one day after my son's Brian's birthday. He turns 13 on Thursday. He and some friends are coming to the game on Friday night. So good to know that the similar birthdays off by one day. So happy early birthday to Val. And we know how much you listen to and care about the podcast, and we appreciate all the support you give us.
You tell us what you think. Hit us up on X at Nats_chat. You can email the show, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on our website, natschatpodcast.com, at which you can purchase a Nats Chat podcast t-shirt. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat podcast.
Rivera leading from first. Grace holding on the bag against him. The pitch. Swinging. There's a shot. Deep in the right center. Racing back to Lucci. Still going back into this. It goes right over his glove. He missed it. But Ruben Rivera missed second base. Now he's heading for third, and they're going to throw him out by plenty. But the corner third is blocked. Now he's heading home. The loose ball in the infield. And he's out by 5 feet at the plate. And that was the worst base running in the history of the game. The game should be over, and Ruben Rivera just did the worst base running you will ever see.